Circle of Death happening. We are
Oh,
we are
we're
now.
live.
We're
Circle
live
of
now.
death. We're
We're live
starting with
now.
the circle of death.
No, not the. I didn't mean that. I did not. Hello, folks. Welcome to this show, the Circle of Death show. Anybody that has a Windows computer understands what that means.
Oh, yeah. I don't speak that language.
No, you don't. No. But yeah, no, we're even though we've done this show quite a few times now,
Mhm.
we're still experimenting with the start button because there's a delay. There's a delay.
AKA circle of death.
That's right. We watch the circle go round and round and round, and it's like almost like it surprises us, right? It's like, woo, hey, we're live.
We'll get it. We'll get it one day. We'll be
Oh,
ready,
hey,
smiling.
no pressure, no pressure, right? Yeah. So hey, man, this week really went fast, hey? I don't know about you, but it felt incredibly quick.
Yeah, you know what they say, time is relative is so true. I mean, the weeks are just going by so fast. I mean, we're like already past mid-April.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And
that's
and the
kind
spring
of
flowers are trying to come out, and we keep getting snow, hail, wind, minus temperatures. It's yeah, Mother Nature's really giving us a run for its money. It's like it
sounds
doesn't want
like
to let
it.
go of winter. So
So what's been going on with your week? What made it go by so fast?
well, first of all, it's the whole illusion of time, right? But it's just the activities, like the smoothness, the flow. Okay, it's I really, particularly in the last couple of days, I've really felt the flow of life, like being part of the flow as opposed to struggling and trying to keep afloat and doing all those other things that we sometimes all get sort of trapped in on and just and I think one of the key words, and this came up in several conversations even today, was the allowance,
Mm,
like opening up the bandwidth, having having this allowance to not so much be in control of what's going on, but just sort of allowing, observing, and then in a way following, like just going with it as opposed to going against it or trying to change it in some way that would make it better for me.
hmm
And the experience I got on the other end, and it still continues, is that it's far better than I would have ever done.
hmm
The results are better, all these kind of things. So it's interesting, we both sort of, again, being in sync about our topic today, which is on gratitude and being present. Um, it just it just seems so relative this week. And I think part of me being so much in that flow or being so present, um, which brings a very grateful heart, um, created the illusion of time just going by so quickly. Like there was lots of stuff going on, and it's always been a big surprise of how much has been going on, and 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 that time really never played any role in anything. Now back to you.
Well, I was actually going to ask you a question that I get a lot from people
Yeah.
when I try and bring them back to the present moment, right? How do I stay present? How
Hmm.
do you do that? How do you just not go to the worry, to the past, to the resentment, to the what ifs?
Well, I know from in my experience, it always seems to start with the uh, awareness. So it's about noticing where I am in the moment. So I notice. For me, it's the gauge of my feelings, right? So I know my experiences are coming from my feelings, and that's how I view the world. So when I feel there's something brewing, because one of our natural, at least my natural state, is I'm quite content.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm not in my head, I'm very relaxed, calm, and content. So I notice when I'm not calm and content. There's something rubbing, there's something irritating. Um, and so it always starts with awareness, and then it's sort of then it's a reflective piece that comes in. Okay, so where is my attention? And in particularly this last couple of days, I have really, and I don't know if I was been consciously doing it or not, but I've been really aware of where my mind has been going on anything that has been happening within my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations, the events that are unfolding, whether I'm driving or in a grocery lineup or any of those, that kind of stuff. So it's really about paying attention to where I am in my head, and when I notice that I'm someplace different, in other words, I'm not in the moment, I have a chance of coming back into the moment. So it's really letting go of the train of thought that's going on about, usually about what's going on in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, I don't have to take that train of thought,
Mm-hmm.
right? I could just sit back and relax and see what actually happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, am I going to make my appointment on time? I don't know. Right? If I keep thinking about it, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to be so worked up about about it, that I'm not going to have a good experience about it. So when I notice that, and I let that train of thought sort of go on its own way, I can relax, and I just naturally fall back into the present moment. Like it's just naturally present. So I'm not sure if you have that kind of same experience, but I think it always starts with awareness.
Of course, I think it does start with the awareness sometimes of the fact that you're not being present,
Yeah.
right? That and I'm sure that's what you meant to say. Uh, and I would say, for us, because we are so used to redirecting ourselves this way, might be a little bit easier. It's like all things. When you start riding a bicycle, it takes a little bit to get the hang of it. When you start
Oh, totally.
walking or
Oh, yeah.
riding, all of
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
So the more you do it and the easier it gets. But if you're just getting started, really when you start feeling uncomfortable in your body, right? Having thoughts that start like raising your anxiety, or you start feeling angry, or, like you start going into all the what ifs, that's a pretty good clue that you're moving
Absolutely.
away from being present, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so one way to know, right, for sure is like, what is this happening right now? Ask yourself, is any of this happening right now? Or are you rehearsing the past and projecting into the future? It's one of those two things.
It
You
usually
can
is.
either you can either be in the past or in the future or in the present, right?
Yeah.
But the present is just what is, right? The present is what is actually happening.
Yes.
And so we just save ourselves that load of emotional, distress that it creates, because typically we don't really spend our times with projecting beautiful things into our future, right? Thinking about all the wonderful things that we want. We do that sometimes, but often what really keeps us busy and creates the distress and the stress and the anxiety are those things that we either, feel angry towards or didn't like that happened, or the things that we're afraid may happen, right? So those are the things that we're talking about. If you're someone that can be be thinking about all the beautiful things that have happened and stay in a place of gratitude with that, or really like consciously create a beautiful future for yourself in your vision, go right ahead. Have no problems with that,
Mhm.
right? But the reason why we suggest so often to try and stay present is because it brings down that fight or flight system that gets engaged when you go into all the things that stress you out and make you angry and worry you, right? And so one way to really, literally detect that, create that awareness that Rick is talking about is to really notice in your body.
Yeah.
Is my heart rate going up? Am I starting to sweat? Am I starting to breathe heavier? Am
Yeah.
I starting to get a little, pissy? Like really check in with yourself. And if you are, there are ways that you can bring yourself back to the present that are not just like that the mental effort of convincing yourself to focus on what you're doing in that moment. There are some techniques, breathing techniques, what I call presencing, so like really focusing on something that you are looking at. Just look at 3 or 4 things that are in your environment. Try to use all your senses, the smells that you smell, what you hear, focus on one sound at a time. uh, Touch things, on your body or in your like tactile, like try to use all your senses to bring yourself to the present moment. And and that's a good way, right? That's a good technique, because often just redirecting your thinking may not be the most natural, or like something that instinctually people can do,
No,
right? Or know how to do.
no, and that's why I'm not a really good um, supporter of sort of like positive thinking in the sense, because when you reflect back on the nature of thinking, or of your thoughts, right? There isn't a lot of control over. If I had more control over my thinking, you would think that I would be thinking better thoughts all the time,
Mm,
right? So,
yeah.
right? I mean, but so there's something randomness about how thought kind of just flows in.
It's automated. A
Yes,
lot of it is automated,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, understanding that it comes in randomly, it could also leave in the same way,
Hmm.
unless I focus
You give
and
it
grab onto it
attention.
and
Yeah.
give it attention, give it give it some weight. And I was talking
Hmm.
with a client this morning about how, if you looked at this as a metaphor, right now it has no real weight. It feels something. I feel something about it. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 12 ounces, maybe a pound at the most, kind of a thing. And if I hold on to it for a brief moment of time, nothing. Like there's nothing. I'm not stressed about it. I'm not tired about it. If I hold on to it for 10 minutes, oh, this doesn't feel like a pound anymore. If I hold on
Hmm.
to it for a day, now we're right. And if you can imagine, if I held on to it for a whole week, I couldn't. And you wonder why we are feeling the way we are when we look at how long have you been holding on to that thought. And like you point out to, when notice the mind body connection, because some people, I do too, I feel it in my body, and I know that feeling coming from my thinking. It's where
Hmm.
it's the gauge, is my barometer. And the big thing for me is that overwhelmness, right? Because I tend
Hmm.
to say a lot of things. I like to do a lot of things, and at moments of time it feels like, how am I ever going to get this finished? And I could feel the tightness in my chest.
Hmm.
And I double check. I'm a paramedic. Okay, am I having actual chest pain, or is it just? Oh, wait a minute, denial is one of the first signs. But but
But you even just, I just want to point out that that question that you just asked yourself, how am I going to get this done?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's a future based question, right?
absolutely, absolutely. It's a future based question. So all those hints that we're talking about, right, all reflect back on, where are you, right?
Hmm.
And there are so many different things that you can do. Some people really like meditation. Some people like deep breathing. Some people, and you really got to find what kind of works for you, right? And for me, it really is about, literally, I take a big cleansing breath, and I literally just fall back in my chair, and I just sort of let whatever energy's there just go, and it
Mm-hmm.
and it quiets me down enough where I become present. And when you are present, you have clarity. And when you have clarity, you get to see what's next. What really is the next step? And so it's from that point that I get to move forward. And everything else just kind of goes away because there's nothing, it's not important anymore. It doesn't matter. There is no matter, kind of a deal. So that's for me. And I'm not saying that that's for everybody, but I found that to be the most helpful.
And like I want to point out, we're not saying ignore if you have a deadline, in the future, if there's, like things that you need to get to by a certain time, or like what we are saying, what we're, like emphasizing is that getting into a state of worry or anxiety about it by projecting yourself into it in the now, it just doesn't make it come faster or change, or it's not really doing anything for you other than giving you the anxiety. It's not making you move faster, it's not making you do things better. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I find I let go of deadlines, for instance, and I create a lot of deadlines, that used to be my strategy for getting things done. Was
Mm.
I would artificially create a deadline for myself, saying, "Okay, I'm going to complete this by X amount of time." Like I would, I think I probably still drive my wife a little bit crazy, but I would, you know, let's renovate, a week before Christmas.
I remember you telling me that.
Little things like that, right? Um, thinking that was the solution, but it wasn't. It was never the solution. It did was drive me and probably others in the household crazy.
Oh, definitely drove everybody else in the house crazy. Let's be realistic. But I love that you admitted that it drove yourself crazy
Oh,
too.
totally. I was never present because I was always looking at the deadline, looking at the
Mm.
deadline. You know, and letting go of that, okay, and getting out of the practice of creating these artificial deadlines. But even then, I have, I work, volunteer for another organization. We set a date when a particular event has to happen, and I work towards that event. And in the past, I would use that deadline as a piece of motivation, and and create this extra anxiety. Now I find when I stay more present and not and let go of the deadline, I get a whole much more done quicker,
Mhm.
way quicker than I would
You
have.
probably get organized differently too.
Everything falls into place
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I have more clarity. I'm more present. I'm only working or focusing on what I can actually do now, instead of
Hmm.
worrying about what tomorrow I have to do and what I have to do next week or all this kind of stuff. So there's so much. Even the word present, there's presence in the present. There's
Hmm.
gifts. There's gifts in. I just came out of that. There's gifts in the present. Little play on
Hmm. It's so true.
word. Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah, it's certainly not an easy. I really sympathize with the difficulty of grasping it for most people, because we are so wired to do the opposite. We're so in
Well,
this
culturally,
yeah,
right? Yeah, we're taught.
culturally, as human beings, right? We were conditioned, we carved that path our entire lives.
Yeah.
So starting to think in the direction of being present is starting to carve a new path, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about this all the time. Like you're moving away from the road that has worked for you, that you go with your eyes closed, you go down that road with your eyes closed. That's an easy thing to do for your brain. It is not necessarily the best way to
Yeah,
go, right? And to go a different way, that means that you have to learn that way. That means that you have to intentionally remind yourself to make a right turn instead of a left turn, right? And so it's not as automatic, right? You may just find yourself like automatically going left, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh boy, I'm here again, right? And it's okay. And it's okay. That's how change starts. You just remind yourself that, you know what, next time I need to go in the other direction. You just redirect yourself in that moment. And by doing it over and over and over again, you're going to start catching yourself sooner and sooner and sooner, noticing and creating that awareness sooner, and really start really noticing the benefits
absolutely.
of living
Yeah.
in that way, thinking in that way.
It- and how much ease comes out of that, because you know um, when you're uneasy, that's when the disease happens, kind of a thing, right?
Hmm.
Like, and you can feel that in your body, like the tightness in your chest, the high blood pressure, the adrenaline's pumping through. You're not relaxed, right? You're on edge. Anybody that speaks to you, like you react instead of respond. So there's that fight or flight
You're in a
constantly going.
tunnel, right? You're
Yeah,
in this tunnel where this one thing that's happening or that just happened is the only thing that matters in that moment. And like there's
yeah,
nothing else matters. And you're like so reactive to it that you do not see anything else. You don't see any other possibilities. You don't see any other solution. You don't see any other outcome. You just see disaster and you see, the worst case
right.
scenario. Yeah.
I use this a lot
Where's where's
today.
your globe? Where's your globe? I like the globe.
Oh,
The snow globe.
the snow globe,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and this is what we end up doing, right? We keep shaking up our minds,
Hmm.
thinking that, okay, if I thought more harder, or if I really figured this thing out, I could do better. But really, all you need, the real secret to everything is to relax and be present in the moment. And it's from that, like you don't settle a dirty pond by keep stirring it up, right? You allow it to settle, and then the clarity comes through. And that's exactly what our minds are. They're built for that. They're built for to the minute we notice, and we let go. And this is part of what my metaphor for letting go is, we fall back into that grace of life, that where that peace lies. And out of that peace, all understanding appears, right?
Hmm.
And it's almost it's in some ways it is feels spiritual, because it's like, where did that idea come, like, where's that out of the blue, right? I didn't have to think about it. It's like, what it occurs to me, that's my next step. And there's something relaxing about that, because there's nothing to figure out at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are we tying this into gratitude?
Well, when you're present to the moment, all you see is, for me anyways, is how perfect things are happening. Like, and you just fall into gratitude. Like, to me, that's part of the parcel of being present, is you have a grateful heart. You are grateful, because anything out of that, when you think about it, has nothing to do with the present moment. So if I'm ungrateful about something that's not present. Like I want to manipulate it or change it in some particular way so I can feel better. That's not being present. Being present means you're accepting and allowing whatever's happening in front of you to be there because it has a right to be there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I feel like gratitude is a very, it's a little bit of an overused term, right? And
It's a
I
big,
think it,
big term.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
I
Thanks for
think
that.
I think it can be triggering to some people because it can feel like a little bit of a bypass. Nonetheless, I think it has an important role in really recognizing what you do have, right? What you do, what is present in your life that is positive, good. Who are the people that you love? Where are you receiving love and um, abundance or whatever it is, right? In the moment that you focus on that, you're also focusing your brain to look for more of that, right? You're engaging your brain and giving it a command to look for more things that it can be grateful for. So even if you don't believe in gratitude, even if gratitude seems overused and a little bit, woo woo, a little bit like bypassy, just humor me. Just always remember that the commands that you give to your brain executes. So whatever you tell your brain's going to go look for. It's your reticular activating system activates to find
Yeah,
things
wherever
to
you're
be
focused.
grateful
Yeah,
for. Yeah.
yeah,
So gratitude is a very good way to um, really acknowledge the things that you do have in your life, acknowledge yourself, the things that you have accomplished, and that's actually a key element in coaching and in the way I work with people and help them focus on what they have accomplished
hmm,
and all that they have done, instead of all that they haven't done or haven't accomplished or where they fell short. It's
yeah.
like, why do we always just focus on that? Right? Well,
Because we,
because we want to better ourselves in that area. Okay. So let's just look at what you did do well and how did you do it?
yeah,
Let's replicate that. Let's look at where you have accomplished your goals, where you have shown up powerfully. And I would say that gratitude is a superpower, right? I would say that gratitude creates the perfect um, set of thoughts for you to just really act from a place of empowerment versus disempowerment, right? To really focus on what you do want and what you do want to create versus what you do not want and what you want to do differently, right?
it also for me means I'm accepting it as it is. Like I'm grateful
Mm-hmm.
for it for what it is, not for what it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you're right about it's so much easier. And I was thinking about this before we got on. It is so much easier to point towards faults, not only in ourselves but in others. You know what we're not grateful about what's happening. What's wrong with the world. Um, I there's a photographer out in Hawaii. His name is Dwight Jones. He's a National Geographic photographer, and I got to be in one of his workshops way back when, and I just love his tagline on all his photos is about um, celebrating what's right,
Mm-hmm.
and as yes, it's easy to say that that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Who's to say that's wrong, for one thing?
Yeah.
But what can you say that's right, right? And when I become more present and when I'm really in that gratitude, grateful sort of mind space, I start to really notice how perfect the world actually does work. in spite of my thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and how fragile everything is. Like, to know that, if the sun moves, you know 10 10 miles closer, we're all gonna fry, kind of a thing. It's like it's the perfect distance away from us, right?
Mm-hmm.
To support life, and that's nature. Nature is there to support life. It may, and I know what's going on in the world, and everybody says, how could you be grateful with people killing people and all this other kind of stuff, and the news highlights all the tragedies that are going on in the US over the Easter weekend, and how could you be grateful about that? Well, that's those are micros
Static.
microscopic points in a vast world where there's a lot of good going on. There's a lot of
But it's also that
yeah,
same way of thinking and focusing on what is not going well. It's like,
yes,
well, I understand that there's a lot of pain and suffering happening in the world, and we're not diminishing that.
no,
That doesn't make my children any less, worth it, in my life. It doesn't make my gratitude for having them, or
yeah,
my home, or what I have accomplished, right? Like, it's not an either or thing,
yes,
right?
yeah,
What Being grateful doesn't mean that you bypass the pain and the tragedies and what is happening, right? And we acknowledge that and we recognize it, and just focusing on it is not going to change the tragic events. It's
no.
not going to change the reality of it. And again, that doesn't make the things that I'm grateful for any less worthy of my gratitude, So, yeah, I don't really find that argument to hold too much water, Well, how can you be grateful? Well, I'm grateful for what I have. Actually, I am appreciating what I have, right? I can see the things that I have. And while I acknowledge what is not going well, what I don't have, focusing on them doesn't really change much other than, okay, perhaps there's something I want to change in my life. I acknowledge it and I create a plan around it.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to sit there in a place of resentment and anger because I don't have those things. I still have the things that I can be grateful for.
So do you see a sense of, when we're not grateful, how for me it seems more stagnant and more about no action. It almost has a feeling of no action.
It's
And yet when I
disempowering.
yeah,
It's
it's
disempowering. It feels like there's nothing you can do about it,
yeah.
right?
So
Well, it's out of
let's
my
do nothing.
hands.
Yeah, so let's do
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
So terrible things are happening in Ukraine right now, and therefore I can't be grateful. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me, right? Because I'm even more grateful that I'm not in Ukraine, that I'm fortunate enough to be here and be able to enjoy the people and the things that I do have, right? It's a little bit of, I feel like when you lose someone, you
Hmm.
feel like, oh, only if I appreciated what I had more, right? And then you start living in regret for what you didn't do, right? Uh, and this is the opposite of that. It's being present with what you do have and
Yes.
appreciating it while you have it, instead of going to where you don't have something or someone, right? Well, let's start with what I do have, and let's start to fully appreciate what it brings in my life, what it means to me. Really staying present in the moment, even with the people that you love, really enjoying that hug or watching that movie together or laughing together or having fun, I think that when you're not present and grateful like that, you're constantly thinking about the next thing you have to do. And I catch myself doing that
Oh
too,
yeah.
don't get me
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
right? My kids want to play with me and I'm thinking about dinner. It's going to
Yeah.
be too late. And the laundry needs to come out, and
Yeah.
and then, they're going to go to bed too late, right? And while they're trying to spend time with me, my thoughts are drifting in that direction. And now I'm like, doing the playtime with them or like spending time with them, but they really notice that I'm not really there. I'm not
Yeah.
present,
Yeah.
right? Oh, mommy, you're not paying attention. Mommy, this is not fun. You're not answering. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I heard the washing machine finish. Oh, mom, you said you were going to play with us.
Yeah.
And you know what, honey, you're right. I did say I was going to play with you.
Yeah.
And is what's going to happen if I don't take the laundry out right now? I mean, it may be another extra 10 minutes tonight. I think I can live with that, right?
That's a it's it seems like an innocent example, but it's so true for everything that we do in our life.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything, right? Because if it's not the laundry, we're thinking about, the next conversation we're going to have with our boss tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole evening is gone,
Mm-hmm.
and we only have this time. We only have this moment.
Or you meet a friend you haven't seen in a while, and she's doing this the whole time. And it's like, I love you, and I don't know how to tell you that that is not spending time with me.
You're not being present.
I mean, you can do what you want. I don't want to tell you what to do. But what is the point of you and I meeting for lunch or dinner and you're really spending the time with your phone, sending that email, or like if it's something so pressing, perhaps do it before we meet or make a note to yourself to
Yeah.
do it right after, right? So often we're not present in the moment, even with the people that we love, the plans that the intention was there to spend time together, let's catch up, and then you're sucked into all the what ifs and all the things that you need to respond to. And it's like, did you really need to make that comment on Facebook right now? Like, was that truly, be honest with yourself? Did that truly need to happen in that moment? Did that really need to happen at all?
How
Right?
was that?
I mean, how much of what we feel that we need to do in the moment does it really have to happen? And when we
Absolutely.
take a close look at that and we're
Absolutely.
very honest with ourselves, you don't have to tell anyone. You make your own list, look
Yeah.
at it on your own, right? Admit it to yourself.
Yeah.
I would say like a good like 70%, you don't have to do. Like all the little things that seem so innocent,
I even think it's higher than that. I think it, but I mean, you're pointing to the really, like, we only have one moment, right? This one,
Mm-hmm.
this present moment. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to choose what you're going to do in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
You may think you're doing something different, but you're always doing it in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're going to spend this time thinking about your laundry or thinking about, you know, what you're going to say on your next post or your next text, you're going to do it in this moment. But in the
Mm-hmm.
meantime, this moment will be gone,
Yeah.
and somebody on Facebook had posted this poem. It was kind of like a poem, but it was using this metaphor of life being, um, well, you heard this before, like a bowl of cherries, right? And but but there's a certain moment in everybody's life where you think the bowl is constantly full, and so you're not paying much attention to it. You're not, it's like, but then there comes a moment somewhere along the line where you notice that there's only a few cherries left, or there are more days behind you than there lies ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, there's two constants in this world: we're born and we die.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. And the more I find that I'm comfortable with death, the more present I actually become.
Mm-hmm.
Because what have I got? What's like? I used to say to some people I used to coach, they say, well, it's like I'm worried about this. I said, well, what's the worst possible thing that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, right? Well, they're not going to like me. Well, could you live with that?
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the worst thing that could happen? Well, I could die. Well, could you live dying? Could you be happy? Like I know it's not a subject we want to go into, but I mean, when you reflect on that, like you only have this one moment. So I can spend it worrying about the future, or I can spend it about brewing about what happened in the past.
And by the way, that's also true. I want to give another example because that's
Yeah.
something that we do a lot. We often, talk about like rehearsing the past, and like projecting into the future. And it's all happening in your head, and it's how it takes up space in your head.
Yeah.
But guess what? Often, when you are so into the rehearsing and into your story, you end up spending that time with the people that you love, rehearsing the past and projecting into the future. And so the conversations become very much about all the things that have upset you and all the things that didn't go your way and that you're angry about and all the things that may go wrong into the future, right? And then you end up spending a whole evening talking about rehearsing this stuff over and over and over again. And the evening may end and you realize you never asked the other person how they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it kind of really rubs you of what you do have in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? What the person that's there, making themselves available to you. Or it could even be a relationship where you're feeding into that to each other, right? I just did my rehearsing, now you do your rehearsing, like let's call it complaining, let's call it, like dumping, whatever you want to call it, and how was that useful? Well, I felt heard and I felt like there's somebody else in this with me. That's
Yeah,
great.
I have company.
And you're still in it.
Yeah.
And you're still in it together, but
Yeah.
still in it, right? And that's still rehearsing. That's reaffirming your story. You're just rehearsing, just reaffirms your story and reaffirms your identity in that story, right? We create identities around our stories, right?
And then we act according to those
And
stories.
then we act and create our reality according
Yeah.
to that, because guess what? Going back to what you command to your brain gets created in your reality. This is my story. This is who I am. I am the person that was cheated, that was mistreated, that, life is never fair, like,
Yes.
uh, you know, everyone is just whatever,
Out to get
lying
me.
or,
You're lying.
like,
The cheat.
just
Yes.
bluffing or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? And that becomes the story of your life. That becomes the thing that you rehearse and you tell people about, that creates your identity of, I identify with this person that's always being, mistreated, or, the life is so unfair for me,
Yeah.
and I constantly, and I, it's actually really fascinating. I know that we talked about having this conversation in another one of the shows, but like, I can't help it when I spend time with my friends or, people in my life to notice patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is what I do. And it's really fascinating to, and I don't go around correcting people or pointing things out because I don't think
No,
that's
there's a
appropriate,
no.
right? But I
Sometimes.
notice, nonetheless, I cannot shut my brain. And so I notice how in everything that the person says, in all the stories that they tell you and all the things that they make them angry, it's just another version of the story. It's just another way to affirm that they're a victim, that they are, being, life is so unfair to them, that everyone in the world is just a cheat, right? So every story that they tell you and the way they relate to anything, it's a
Mm-hmm.
version of that,
Yep.
right? Because their brain is engaging based on that command that's been
Yep.
given,
Yep.
based on that belief.
Yeah.
And I know this may be a little bit hard for people to understand, but it's so crystal clear to me that I'm like, I really see it. I really, really see these patterns in people, and we are all blindsided to our own
And,
patterns,
well,
right?
and in an innocent way. in an
In
innocent
an
way.
innocent way. We don't
Yeah, because if
notice.
you
Yeah.
really did know, and this is what I
Yeah.
like about Michael Neal's TED talk about why are we not awesomer? Given
I love it.
all the self help groups and all the self help books and all the different things that people have access to, why aren't we awesomer, right? And part of it is exactly what you are relating to, is that innocently, you know we just don't know better right now, right? And but when you wake up to some truths, right, that yeah, we have been creating patterns and ways of acting, um, based on survival mechanisms all through
Mhm.
our life, and that you know we are, how did one person put it, like in some ways it's like we either are acting out of our thinking or we are in the present moment,
Mhm.
right?
Well, we're running the program. We're
Well,
just
that's what I
running
mean.
the
Like,
program,
you
right?
cannot you cannot necessarily be present. I don't think you can be present if you're running a program, because
Exactly.
your object
Exactly.
is different. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And so we don't notice because the program, guess what? Like Joe Dispenza says, the environment is running us, the program is running us because
yeah.
we're unconscious to the fact that we have left the steering wheel to the
Hmm.
program, right? The program that's running is running us because we just completely gave it
Yeah.
power, right? We're no longer noticing it.
No,
And
and
I,
yeah, and we're acting according to what we think is the truth, right? And it's our justified truth, and I use a ladder metaphor, but that basically, we've got all these belief systems that remove us away from the present moment, like, and when I find myself more present, I'm less about that. Like, there's
mhm,
less thinking, there's less more on it, there's less meaning on it. And when I have no meaning, I can't help but be grateful for what's happening right now, right? Because it just, like, wow. I mean, think about it. If I had to 20 years ago say, I'm going to meet this wonderful lady out in New York, and we're going to have this show, and we're going to talk about all these really crazy things, and I'm going to have like 4 kids and 9 grandchildren and wonderful sons-in-laws, and like, when I was when I would say you're nuts, like, but how things just sort of worked its way through, in
yeah,
spite of all my thinking about it, you know and and you pointed out to what you could be grateful for, like what you have, what you've gone through to get here. Everybody should have a lot of medals on their chest when you think of
mhm,
the various
yeah.
things, and yet here you are, you keep showing up, and you're responding to the moment.
You're responding to the moment and you are appreciating
Yeah.
the moment, right? Like, what is the point of striving for all these things, right? At some point, having children was in my future, something that I worried about making happen by a certain date, certain time, right? And then there it was, and I couldn't enjoy it because I was worried about
Oh,
what am I gonna
how
do? If
how
he
am I
doesn't
gonna
sleep
feed these
ever, what am I gonna do if this kid doesn't stop pooping all the time? I'm gonna be changing diapers for the rest of my life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're never here. We're
No,
always there,
we're
right? And when
all,
we get there, we're somewhere else,
yeah.
right?
You just keep
And
zoom, zoom. Yeah,
yeah, you're always like where you're not.
yeah,
And there
totally.
is it's a gift to be able to bring ourselves back
Yeah,
to what we do have. The really these things that we fought so hard for, that we sat down and dreamt about, right? That we really wanted to accomplish and achieve, right? Which is why achievement in on itself does not create happiness,
no.
right? Because guess what? Once you get there, it's like, now what?
Yes.
Where's my next thing to worry about? Where do I go from here? I need to be fed my dose of worry.
Yes.
I made money. I need more. I have a house. I need a bigger one. It's not good enough, right? Because we can never just stay here and happy with what we have.
No. And it's amazing how abundance, and I know our guest next week will talk about that. Um, but when we're not focused on abundance, how abundance appears. Like
Oh,
we start
yeah.
to realize how abundant things really are, right? So it's
Well, because the focusing part
yeah, we have more
is
clarity.
is emphasizing
Yeah.
that we don't have it, right? Like it's anxiety,
Yeah.
right? Like, does it come from a place of intention? That's what I really want. And like, I'm like coherently thinking about manifesting this thing, or does it come from a place of neediness and lack, right? I need that because I don't have it, right?
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the two things,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
big difference.
And
So,
and again, where your attention is, future, past, right? And again,
yeah.
you're not present. You don't have clarity. You're not you're not grateful for what you have. Why would you want more if you're not going to be grateful for what you have?
Well, because I got the thing that I wanted and I still feel like I'm missing something. And you
Well,
know why that is? Because your brain is has the command that it's always missing something. I am telling you, it's really that simple. The moment that you understand this mechanism,
mm-hmm.
that the command that you give your brain is what your brain executes and the feelings that it creates around it, you will never feel fulfilled or happy or complete until you give that command to you teach your brain how to feel fulfilled, complete, grateful for what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Actually allow your brain to enjoy what you do have, what you did accomplish, right? So if you're constantly feeling like I need to get there because I don't have it, even when you get there, your brain's
Yeah,
you
you'll not.
know
Yeah,
is running the program. I don't have it. I need to find something else because this is not feeling
yeah,
that feeling of like completeness, right? Well, you got to teach it. You got to teach your brain how to feel that way. You got to teach your brain how to appreciate it once you have it. If you don't know how to do that, then your brain does what it knows.
well, they don't teach it in
I need
school.
more. I need
Yeah.
more. I didn't do it. Your brain knows that you're not complete, that you don't ever do enough, right? Why do we stress so much? Some of these things have been spoken about so much and oftentimes even overused, but like feeling enough. That's what feeling enough is, right? Like feeling that you've done enough, you have arrived, you do have the things that you can be grateful for, that you do have within you the ability to do and reach your goals and be who you want to be.
You're at your strongest point when you're present,
Yeah.
because the energy that it takes to go anywhere else, removes you from that strength point. And from your present moment, from now, you're more adaptable. Like it's like grounding, right? It's like being centered. Like when you're centered, you can go in any direction. But if you're already over here, got to be in the screen. If you're already over here, it's pretty hard to move over there real quickly, right? But if
Hmm.
you're centered, right, you're able to go where you are needed and you can respond accordingly rather than react. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I cannot emphasize, the practice of knowing or being aware of where you are in the moment, and then dropping it or letting go of it, whatever it takes for you to do. For me, it's like, yeah, like putting less importance on what could happen and just focusing on what is happening.
Hmm. And
um
and sometimes that feels like is the hardest choice to make in the moment, which is the only time where the moment matters. Is like we make the choice that's habitual, that's easier and in the moment, right? But if you really want to think about on the long run, in the long run, that keeps you in suffering, in anxiety, and
Oh,
worry,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And yes, it might be a little bit hard to redirect yourself at the beginning because it's not habitual. It's not your, your um, autopilot,
no.
right? And at the same time, once you program a new autopilot, then now you got rid of the worry, the anxiety that, like you can create it. It takes a little more effort in the moment
Well,
to be
it's
present
that
and to,
uncomfortableness. There's like, right?
yeah, it's
Because
uncomfortable.
yeah,
Yeah. Because
yeah,
it's not our usual self. It's not our familiar self, right? How we do things. Now you want to change things up on me? Well, how is what you know doing for you? And
yeah.
often people are like, oh, really wish that I could change something. But guess what? That takes a little bit of work. It doesn't just come to you, because you want to change it. You actually have to make the effort and take the actions and create the change
In the present moment.
in the present moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow.
So much to say about gratitude and being present. Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew? Who knew? Well, and and that's kind of like the game I kind of love to play is really letting go of knowing what's coming next. In other words, play with the unknown. And we a lot of people don't think that we put in a whole agenda together. We don't.
No,
We
we don't have time for that. Talking about
we're so much in the present moment. We're not thinking a week in advance. um but that's how it
time.
works.
Quiet.
No,
A little bit.
a little bit, but the notion is, at least for me, is, it's like, okay, what will come up for a topic, right? So if I start worrying about that right now, it removes me from this present moment.
This conversation. Yeah.
And we've always had the ability to have this, we call them out of the blue ideas that kind of pop into us when are in a relaxed state, almost in the zone. And well, it is the zone for where there isn't any effort. And 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 we've all experienced this zone. Being in the zone is as present as you could get, because there's no thinking, there's just doing. So whether it's
Mhm.
a creative process of creating art or a sculpture, or doing a high acuity medical call, emergency call, or surgery, um, there isn't a whole lot of extra thinking going on. It's very, very present. There's no thought, and there's no concept of time. Like when you come out of it, you go, "Oh, I'm surprised only 10 minutes went by," or "I'm surprised that 2 hours have gone by." Like there's no conceptual notion about time. Um, and I would say 99% of our ideas come out of that, where we just sort of like, we text each other and go, "Hey, what do you think of this? I just had this come in. I'm thinking the same thing," right?
But my firewall doesn't block you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you're not blocking me, yes. And I'm not trying to add a lot of meaning to that, but
It's just an inside joke. I do have some really strict
yeah,
do
very
not
strange.
disturb setting out
Yeah.
of it
But yeah,
without
so
meaning
anyways,
to.
I encourage everybody that's listening or watching the recording to really focus on where your attention is, and just notice, like, how present are you in the moment. And when you find yourself in that present moment, just notice how grateful you might be. Like how much look for those feelings. Like follow those.
And if it helps, sit down one time and make a list of all the things that you're grateful for,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You are allowed to cheat. You're allowed to have the paper that you spy on. You're allowed to help yourself in any way you can. The
There's
goal
nothing
is
right or
not
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing right or wrong.
Yeah.
If making a list beforehand and thinking about it for an hour is what it takes, do it one time. Pull up your list every time and look at it.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I'm thank you.
You're welcome. Make your cheat list. And it's not cheating, it's just what
Well,
works for
no,
you,
no, no.
right?
But I'm just saying,
Definitely.
I just,
Yeah.
I had a grateful moment. I really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate every meeting, every Wednesday. Um, and whether people hear us or not, it doesn't matter in that sense, right? We're not here to we're here to share,
We're
and
here to share
this is what's been on our mind, and this
our
is
conversations. Our secret conversations are no longer secret.
no, this is a raw deal, and we're still looking for a name. So if you happen
Still
to
looking for a name, and and we will always accept suggestions for topics that you would like
oh,
to
absolutely,
hear
yeah,
about, the things that you feel challenged by and you don't know how to tackle them. Go ahead and let us know.
yeah,
We'll be
absolutely,
happy to speak to it.
yeah. Nothing's taboo. Nothing.
Yeah, and you can interact with us in the chat,
Yeah.
ask questions, make comments, correct us if we're wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we don't have all the answers. I want to hear from other people too.
Hmm.
I want to see what they see. So anyway, thank you very much. You have an awesome week.
You too, Rick.
All right, and everybody else have an awesome week too, not just you.
I know you're just you're just like worried about how does the end button work now? How many seconds will we have to hold that smile?
I'm hitting the button right now.